Hello, I'm April Briant, and I am pleased to share with you today my research study exploring why managing followers often resist new senior leadership in high senior leader turnover environments. The purpose of this presentation is to share the results of the qualitative research study, as well as the study process itself, that answers this question. Why do managing followers in organizations with high turnover of senior leadership often resist, work against, or wait out the incoming or current senior leader? This phenomena hinders performance and new initiatives being implemented in vital helping industries like healthcare, military, public education, churches, and some industry sectors. This research is based on theoretical foundations of the Kubler-Ross change curve models, stages of grief, the implicit leadership theories lay images of leadership, and the leader-member exchanges quality of the dyadic working relationship. The Kubler-Ross change curve model, stages of grief, informs of ways that managing followers may be acting from a place of unprocessed grief, perhaps even grief they don't realize they are experiencing. The implicit leadership theories lay images of leadership, informs about the impact of preconceived prototypes of leaders. The leader-member exchanges, LMX's quality of the dyadic working relationship, helps give insight as to the quality of the working relationship and how that might bear on the research question. The Kubler-Ross change curve model stages of grief shares with us and informs that managing followers may be acting from a place of unprocessed grief, even if they questioned the leader's ability or qualifications who left. This theory was published by psychiatrist Dr. Kubler-Ross in 1967. It is a tool for understanding the psychological reaction to imminent death she had observed in a number of her patients. This model lifts up denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance as the 5 normal stages of grief, which people experience as one processes significant life change, such as the turnover of senior leaders may have and may be for managing followers, especially in environments where there are frequent turnovers. The Kubler-Ross change curve helped the study explore the potential emotional state that managing followers grieving the change of losing their previous senior leader may be experiencing, and the impact that grief may have on their resistance to follow the incoming or current senior leader. This leads to the first research question. How does the arrival of the current senior leader bring up feelings you may have about the last senior leader leaving in a way that either increases or decreases your willingness to follow their leadership? The Kubler-Ross change curve has become a useful instrument in change management. Criticism of the change curve model points out that there are multiple ways for people to process change. Terrell in 2024 details 4 other models of processing grief, all of which have elements of the Kubler-Ross change curve. More research does need to be conducted, exploring the factors leading to the varying levels of grief, the impact this has on the organization, the followers, and the outgoing and incoming senior leaders. The impact of organizational hosted opportunities for processing grief, and the negative consequences of followers not processing that grief. This leads to the second research question. How Were you given the opportunity to process your grief about the previous senior leader leaving in a way that either increased or decreased your willingness and ability to follow the incoming senior leader? The implicit leadership theory's lay images of leadership helped inform how managing followers may be acting based on the preconceived ideas they have of the senior leader prototype. The implicit leadership theory explores the lay images of leadership that are created through individual experiences as well as social conditioning. When an individual is perceived to be a leader, as well as the type of leader that individual is perceived to be, influences the individual, the team, and the organizational output. There are variations in the implicit ways that followers perceive leaders. Hogan in 1990 demonstrated that certain kinds of people who have identifiable personality traits that are harmful often work their way up to leadership within an organization. Offerman in 1994 conducted studies examining various stimuli and factors that contribute to perceptions that followers have of leaders. Briant in 1987 studied the cultural implications of the implicit leadership theory, which confirmed its generalizability. It has been called future study and future discovery has been called for to better understand how leader and follower prototypes are shaped and what their implications are. Offerman in 94, Hogan in 90, Briant in 1987, and other research scientists since have explored how the characteristics of an individual and the influence of society contribute to the follower's perception of the leader and vice versa. But more research does need to be done on how the experienced historical behaviors, decisions, and cultures of the individual organization and any systems of authority under which that individual organization positions itself impacts the implicit leadership theories, lay images of leadership. This leads to the third research question. How did the preconceived ideas that you have of senior leaders increase or decrease the level at which you were willing to support and follow the incoming senior leader? The leader-member exchange theory informs how managing followers may be acting based on the quality of the relationship between themselves and the current senior leader. The study of relationship forming and relationship maintaining interactions, which helps us measure the quality of a relationship between a managing follower and the current senior leader, is first recorded in research by Weber. Weber later focused on social association and ideal typical forms of socialization. The study of leadership-related relationships grew to be more systematic, as exemplified in the research of the description and measurement of leader behavior conducted by Stogdill and Coons in 1957. The leader-member exchange, called LMX, first referred to as the vertical dyad linkage model, is the most influential way to systematically analyze the vertical dyad over time during role-making activity. LMX focuses on the quality of the dyadic relationship that develops between leader and follower, a focus which continues to be a significant topic of interest, including in this study. Researchers detail the 4 dimensions to be affect, loyalty, contribution, and professional respect. These are the dimensions used to measure LMX. Additionally, researchers found that the level of perceived contribution holds the most sway of all of those factors. When the managing follower perceives a lack of quality in any of these 4 dimensions in the leader, it impacts how they function and feel about the quality of their leadership and their relationship with that current leader, as these dimensions function as currency in the relationship. Traditionally, leadership approaches stress the leader's role in forming LMX relationships. However, the managing follower's actions and attitudes also influence the quality of the LMX relationships. Therefore, the focus of this study is rightly on the managing followers, as senior leaders and managing followers depend on one another to move the organization towards its goals. They're compelled to assess and evaluate one another's intelligence and competence throughout their working relationship. Due to the importance of the results of these evaluations, what a dyadic partner believes the other partner feels about them also influences the quality of the LMX relationship. LMX shows followers will not usually come to a consensus about their experience of the leader because every relationship is different. The 4 stages are described as role making, where roles are assigned, role making, where roles are secured through trustworthy performance and followers earn being in the in-group, leadership making, those in the in-group receive development, and team making, or the leadership network, which is the trust formed among the leadership team. LMX demonstrates that as relationships move through these stages, the most effective LMX begin with the transactional style of leadership and then progress to more of a transformational approach. The first interaction, the level of individualism and power distance, the managing follower judging the senior leader based on one attribute they connected to pre-existing beliefs about various personality types, and whether managing followers perceive themselves to have been placed in the senior leader's in or out group, may be influencing the LMX heavily. This leads to question 4 and 5 for our interviews. How does your level of perceived contribution, loyalty, affect, and professional respect for the current senior leader increase or decrease your willingness to follow their leadership? How does what you believe the senior leader thinks about your level of perceived contribution, loyalty, affect, and professional respect to either increase or decrease your willingness to follow their leadership? Researchers have cautioned in recent years that LMX should not be used as the sole measure, as current LMX research at times lacks objectivity and longevity. There is a need for research that considers elements beyond that specific leader and follower and their immediate relationship, and looks to the extenuating factors that influence that relationship, some of which may predate that particular follower and leader even knowing each other or working together. These areas include the emotional well-being, and this goes for both the senior leader and the managing follower. Their emotional well-being, their mental health, their emotional intelligence, previous positive and negative experiences, the organizational history, practices, and cultural experience that both of them have had throughout their life and years plays a role. This leads to questions 6 and 7. How has the affect the senior leader had on you increased or decreased your trust, respect, and obligation towards them? How have you perceived the affect you have on the senior leader to have increased or decreased their trust, respect, and obligation towards you? The design for this research study included qualitative case study method and content analysis in order to best answer the research question through the utilization of the interview questions. The qualitative case study method allows the researcher to use interview questions to discover the intimate emotions and mindset of managing followers in organizations with high turnover of senior leadership, so as to better understand why they often resist, work against, or wait out the incoming or current senior leader. Case study research allows the interviews to be conducted in a setting that is most comfortable to the participant so that they can be honest as they provide their responses to the interview questions and share their lived experience. Participants in this study were followers who currently or at some time had some managerial responsibility in an organization that experienced frequent turnover of the senior leadership, who acknowledge, the participants all acknowledge, that they have at some point resisted, worked against, or waited out the incoming or current senior leader in those environments. Participants were invited from 4 organizations of varying sizes that are known to have high senior leader turnover. There are certain segments that previous research already highlights are frequently having that situation occur where senior leaders are turning over quickly. Participants of a variety of ages and locations within the United States were invited through social media and word of mouth. A notice about the study was posted on Facebook groups for various areas with contact information for the researcher for those who met the criteria and wished to participate. After they contacted the researcher, an email was then sent to those who indicated their interest in participating, and that email included full details and disclosures. 6 interviews were completed by participants who ranged from ages 28 to 81 years old, who responded to the interview questions in regards to their time employed in the following sectors and sizes of each sector: state government, a medium-sized facility, churches, small and medium churches that were located within a large worldwide nonprofit denomination, state government, public schools, a medium school and a large school, manufacturing, a small for-profit organization, and food service, a small location within a large worldwide organization for profit, and federal government, a large prison. All of the respondents were citizens of the United States from a variety of states. Respondents were 83.3% female, 16.7% male. The respondents were 50% age 50 and above, and 50% age 51 and below. The participants worked and had this experience, some of them had, in multiple industries and organizations. The data was collected through semi-structured interviews. Participants who responded positively to either the post on Facebook or a personal invitation by word of mouth were sent an email with details that asked them to confirm they met the qualifications to be a participant and that they were willing to contribute to the research, and replied with a scheduled time for the interview. The email included the content of the contract, including the purpose of the research, the time required of them should they participate, that they were free to exit the study at any time they wished, that they could request a review of the process or their role or treatment at any time during the study, and that they would have the opportunity to give final approval to the transcripts of the interviews, that they would be able to view the final work if they wished to, that the name and unique identifying markers of the organization would be masked so that their identity and the identity of the organization would be unknown to those reading the study. And it listed the interview questions that they would be asked in the Zoom interview. The participants' time investment was estimated to be 20 minutes. The interview questions were each derived from the literature, as we reviewed in this presentation. The data gathered from the interview questions was coded according to the area it related to for proper analysis, with key phrases identified to look at the commonalities, and that was used to determine and adjust the themes. When the 6 participants from 3 age groups and a wide mix of large and small organizations from a variety of industries were interviewed, the data reached data saturation, as those participants provided insight into the intimate and personal state of being. The interviews were conducted through Zoom. The audio from the Zoom calls was recorded with all the information, including the purpose of the research and the rights of the participants at the beginning of each call. And the participants were asked to verbalize their approval for the interviews to be recorded for research purposes. The transcribed interviews were emailed to participants, and any amendments incorporated before the data was analyzed. All participants were interviewed via Zoom during non-work hours. All participants were willing and understood the purpose of the study. I do want to say also that before the study was conducted, I did get approval to conduct the research on human subjects from our board at Regent University. The transcripts, after they were sent to each participant, were scrubbed manually, then uploaded to Intellectus Qualitative for coding and analysis and recommendations regarding coding and themes. 14 themes were derived from the coded transcripts. These results answer the research question: why do managing followers in organizations with high turnover of senior leadership often resist, work against, or wait out the incoming or current senior leader? These are the themes. The theme of leadership transition expectations helps answer the research question by illustrating how managers' previous experiences with leadership turnover creates anticipatory frameworks that influence their current behavior. When organizations have high senior leadership turnover, managing followers develop expectations based on past transitions, often characterized by short tenures or failed change initiatives. This leads them to view new leaders as temporary. These historically shaped expectations prompt resistance behaviors as a rational response. Why invest in relationships or changes that experience suggests will be short-lived? Rather than seeing resistance as mere obstinacy, this theme reveals it as a learned adaptive strategy based on organizational history and pattern recognition. The theme of unaddressed leadership transition grief helps answer the research question by revealing how emotional processing deficits contribute to resistance behaviors. When organizations fail to acknowledge the emotional impact of leadership transitions, managing followers experience unresolved grief that manifests as resistance. Without structured opportunities to process these feelings in a healthy way, they adopt coping mechanisms like waiting out new leadership or working against them as a displaced expression of their unaddressed emotional responses. This pattern suggests resistance behaviors may be symptomatic of institutional failure to support healthy emotional transitions rather than mere opposition to change. The theme of trust dynamics in leadership relationships helps answer the research question by illuminating how the constant turnover of senior leadership disrupts the natural trust-building process that requires consistency and time to develop. When managers repeatedly experience leadership changes, they become hesitant to invest emotionally and professionally in new relationships that may prove temporary, leading to resistance behaviors. The cycle of building and losing trust with successive leaders creates a self-protective mechanism where waiting out becomes a rational response to avoid the vulnerability associated with trust that has been repeatedly broken. This pattern of deteriorating trust dynamics explains very well why managing followers develop resistance strategies rather than engage with new senior leaders. The theme of defensive adaptive mechanisms helps answer the research question, as it reveals that managing followers develop self-protective responses to cope with the instability caused by frequent leadership changes. When faced with recurring turnover at senior levels, these individuals create defensive routines, such as documenting interactions, bypassing authority, or maintaining low engagement, just staying under the radar, as rational adaptations to preserve their professional standing and their psychological well-being. This pattern of behavior reflects not mere resistance, but a strategic coping mechanism that emerges from the experience of repeatedly investing in relationships with leaders who subsequently depart, creating a self-protective cycle that manifests as waiting out the current leadership. The theme, sustained psychological damage from poor leadership, illuminates how repeated exposure to poor leadership creates lasting psychological wounds that influences followers' resistance behaviors. Managers who have experienced multiple leadership transitions with inadequate leadership develop protective mechanisms like skepticism and disengagement that persist when new leaders arrive. These psychological effects, diminished trust, emotional exhaustion, and learned helplessness, directly contribute to their tendency to wait out or undermine new leadership, as they have internalized expectations of eventual leadership failure based on past trauma. The sustained nature of this damage explains why resistance persists even when new leadership may be very competent. The theme of leadership style dissonance addresses the research question by highlighting how resistance emerges when new senior leaders fail to align their approach with organizational expectations. When incoming leaders display disrespectful attitudes, openly criticize previous leadership, or implement abrupt changes without respecting established practices, managers develop active resistance strategies. This misalignment between expected leadership behaviors and actual practice of leadership creates legitimacy gaps that prompt followers to wait out leaders they perceive as temporary or misguided or incapable, rather than investing in relationships they believe will ultimately fail due to this fundamental disconnect. The fear-based compliance theme reveals that resistance to new senior leadership is rooted in a dysfunctional compliance mechanism, where managers follow directives solely out of fear rather than genuine buy-in. When compliance is fear-based, managers are more likely to engage in minimal effort compliance or passive resistance, waiting out the leader until they inevitably depart. In organizations with high leadership turnover, this fear-based dynamic is particularly counterproductive, as managers learn that superficial compliance while avoiding meaningful change is a much safer strategy than authentic engagement with leaders who may not remain long enough to cement their initiatives. The theme of deteriorating professional trust helps answer why managers resist new senior leadership during high turnover periods, because it reveals how repeated leadership changes erode foundational professional relationships. As managing followers experience a succession of short-term leaders, each transition chips away at their willingness to invest emotionally and professionally in new directives, not just new leadership. This cumulative breakdown of trust creates a self-protective stance where waiting out the current leader becomes a very rational response to what experience has taught them will be another temporary relationship, making resistance a natural consequence of fractured professional trust rather than mere insubordination. The diminished professional value theme helps answer the research question, because when managing followers consistently experience devaluation of their contributions and their professional standing with each leadership change, they develop resistance mechanisms as a form of self-preservation. This theme reveals that managing followers who feel diminished or disrespected by incoming senior leaders may intentionally disengage or resist directives as a way to maintain their sense of professional worth. Their decision to wait out transient leadership stems from previous experiences where their expertise was overlooked, creating a protective response to avoid repeated professional devaluation during high turnover cycles. I also noticed in many of the responses that managing followers believe they know more about what is good for the clients and the organization than the new senior leaders, but very few senior leaders ask them their wisdom. The theme of technological or process change-induced workplace distress helps answer the research question by highlighting how technological or process change disrupts and creates an environment of perpetual job insecurity and a toxic workplace dynamic that motivates middle managers to resist new senior leadership. When managers have previously experienced psychological harm from technological or processes change implemented as overseen by senior leaders, they may adopt defensive postures against incoming senior leadership who want to introduce further technological or process changes. These managers may wait out new senior leaders, believing from past experience that technological or process change disrupts under changing leaderships, and it creates vulnerability rather than opportunity, thus explaining their resistance as a self-preservation strategy in environments where leadership turnover coincides with technological or process transformation. The theme of institutional void in leadership transition support helps answer the research question by revealing how organizational failures to provide structured transition support create conditions for resistance. When formal mechanisms for processing change and establishing new working relationships are absent, managing followers are left without guidance or emotional support during leadership transitions. This institutional void forces them to develop their own coping mechanisms, which often manifest as resistance or waiting out the new leader. The lack of clear direction and support during transitions essentially legitimizes passive resistance as employees default to informal, often self-protective behaviors in the absence of organizational scaffolding for adapting to new leadership. The theme of followership based on authority perception helps answer the research question by highlighting how managing followers assess and grant authority based on perception rather than position alone. In organizations with high senior leader turnover, managers may resist new leadership because they've developed an assessment process that evaluates leadership competence and knowledge before granting followership. When faced with yet another leadership change, these managers aren't automatically deferring to positional authority, but rather waiting out the new leader until they've demonstrated sufficient competence to earn their followership. Similar to how followership relations with various systems evolve based on the demonstrated capabilities of those systems over time, rather than just assigned authority. The theme of leadership legitimacy and professional respect holds answers to the research question by highlighting how managing followers resist leaders they don't professionally respect or view as legitimate. When experiencing high leadership turnover, managers evaluate each new senior leader's competence and communication style before committing their support. Without demonstrated expertise or ethical consistency, managers may withhold their engagement, choosing instead to wait out what they perceive as temporary or undeserving leadership. This resistance stems from a fundamental need for professional respect and legitimacy validation before authentic followership can be established in unstable leadership environments. The theme of leadership disruption and instability addresses the research question by revealing how frequent leadership turnover creates an environment where managing followers develop resistance as a coping mechanism. When organizations experience a revolving door of senior leaders, it prevents the formation of meaningful trust relationships between leaders and their teams, fostering a culture where waiting out the current leader becomes a very rational response. This pattern of disruption creates organizational uncertainty that managing followers attempt to mitigate by maintaining the status quo rather than investing in potentially short-lived change initiatives, effectively explaining why they might resist or work against incoming leaders they perceive as merely temporary fixtures in an unstable leadership landscape. The research question explores why following managers often resist, work against, or wait out the incoming or current senior leader in environments with high senior leader turnover. The study demonstrated that following managers in these environments have multiple reasons that lead to this resistance behavior. The findings of this study contribute to the scholarly body of literature on the phenomena by going beyond previous research, which focused on the results of the phenomena, which are lack of performance and difficulty implementing important initiatives, and provided data which explains why the phenomena occurs. It also details that much of the reasons for the phenomena lie within the organizational structures rather than the individual managing followers. The findings demonstrate the overlap and workplace application of the Kubler-Ross change curve model stages of grief, the implicit leadership theory's prototype of leadership, and the leader-member exchange's dyadic working relationship. The findings of this study furthered the scholarly literature on LMX by going beyond the research that previously was there, which largely limited their focus to the relationship between a specific leader and a specific follower. This research study goes beyond that by proving the importance and the necessity of considering the extenuating factors that influence that relationship, many of which predate the working relationship of that specific leader and follower. The findings of this study contribute to the practitioner literature by highlighting the reasons for a phenomena, which costs organizations a great deal of time, energy, and effectiveness, while also pointing to the starting place for implementing corrective measures for the same. The results of this study not only identify multiple root causes which lead to the disruptive phenomena, but show how they are each connected to a social science theory which informs as to the potential corrective measures that organizational leadership may implement. This research study provides a study which could be repeated after treatment was applied to measure the effectiveness of corrective measures that are implemented in the future within an organization. Due to some of the demographics of the participants, the generalizability of the results of this study may currently be limited. This study did not include any minority participants, and the participants of this study were all natural citizens and residents of the United States. Further recommendations are that research be conducted on participants employed in high senior turnover environments in other cultures and other countries to determine if there is any variance of these root causes based on culture. Further research is also recommended on minority participants employed in these same types of environments to determine if there's any variance in the root causes based on that status. Further research is recommended to be conducted as to the effectiveness of measures which could be implemented that would address or treat the root causes of the phenomena, and the effectiveness of how treating measures are implemented within each industry, where high turnover of senior leadership is more common occurrence, such as healthcare, military, public education, churches, and some industry. Followers with managerial responsibility, referred to as managing followers, often resist, work against, or wait out senior leaders in environments with frequent turnover of senior leaders. This phenomena has proven to result in diminished performance and difficulty in implementing important initiatives. Research as to the cause of this phenomena is largely absent. Research as to the cause of this phenomena, though, impacts sectors prone to high senior leader turnover, many of which are responsible for the well-being of society, including healthcare, military, public education, churches, and some industry. Qualitative research was conducted on 6 participants from the United States who were interviewed via Zoom, providing data regarding their personal lived experience in a wide range of private, public, and government sectors of all sizes. Root causes of this phenomena were discovered. The findings of this study provide data which demonstrates the root causes of this phenomena have very strong connections to the Kubler-Ross change curve model stages of grief, the implicit leadership theory's prototype of leadership, and the leader-member exchange's dyadic working relationship. Further research is recommended on participants in a variety of cultures and countries, as well as minority participants, and could be expanded to test for effectiveness and implementations of measures developed in the future to correct the root causes of this phenomena. I do appreciate you participating today and being a part of this study. The references follow on these pages, as well as my contact information. And I look forward to hearing from anyone who would like to discuss this project further, this research further. Thank you so much.